started in the year 1951. It was the only government engineering college in the state. The college was named after donors Brahmappa, Devendrappa, Kanvapanavar, that is called as BDT, who donated 1.5 lakhs in the year 1950 for the construction of the building. The college became first constituent college, engineering college of Vishweshwar Technological University, Belagavi in the year 2011. The college is approved by AICTE New Delhi. At present, institute offers 7 UG and 10 PG programs, including MBA and MCA. All the departments in the institute have been recognized as research centers and offer PhD and MSc engineering research programs under VT. More than 60 research scholars have received PhD degree, and many research scholars are pursuing their doctoral degree in various frontiers of science, engineering, and technology. The institute has highly qualified, experienced, and dedicated faculty members to impart quality education in engineering and technology to students. Most of the faculty have acquired their master's and doctoral degree from reputed institutions like IISc, IITs, NITs. More than 60 faculty members with doctoral degree in the institute. The institute has undergone the accreditation process for quality twice and able to meet the standards of quality education. The college was one among the 14 institutes in the state of Karnataka to get the World Bank aided EQUIP project phase 1 to develop state of infrastructure. To cater to the needs of the students, the institute has established central and department libraries, member of VTU consortium to get the online access to the national and international journals, NCC, NSS, sports and games, IST student chapter, youth Red Cross wing, student counseling, student council, and annual cultural fest Chaitra, alumni association, department forums, cooperative society, hostel for boys and girls. The training and placement center is actively involved in providing training and placing the students in the reputed public and private organizations. Alumni of our institute are working in the highest post in the reputed public and private organization and got recognition by their knowledge, discipline, and hard work. UBDT College of Engineering and UBDTians continue to serve the society by contributing to the development of science, engineering, and technology. On this occasion, I congratulate the speaker, Dr. C.M. Ravi Kumar, Professor and Consulting Structural Engineering, UBDT College of Engineering, Davanagere, and coordinator of this webinar, Mr. Engineer Rahil Aziz, Consultant for Study Dynamics and Consultancy of India, for taking an initiation to conduct this live webinar for the budding engineers and the professionals. I wish this webinar a great success and very useful for all the participants. Once again, I thank for giving me an opportunity to introduce VTU and my institute. Now I hand over this session to Mr. Rahil Aziz and Dr. C.M. Ravi Kumar. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mallikarjun Holly. So I too wish you all the best for your college and university. So now I would like to introduce with a few words of today's speaker, Dr. C.M. Ravi Kumar. If I have to say about him, short time duration is not sufficient, but I will not take much time. So today's speaker, Dr. C.M. Ravi Kumar, obtained his BE degree in civil engineering from Mysore University and MTech in structural engineering and PhD from NITK Surathkal. So he is presently working as a professor in Department of Civil Engineering, University BDT College of Engineering, Davangere. He has published 33 papers in national and international journals and 21 papers in national and international conference. He is an editorial board member for 2 international journals and reviewed many research papers for journals. He has organized many workshops for departmental engineers of Government of Karnataka. His research interest includes uncertainty in materials and modeling, risk evaluation and performance-based design, fiber reinforced concrete and its applications and more. He has also designed several structures across Karnataka. I'm also glad to say that Dr. Ravi Kumar is also one of the key person for Study Dynamics India. So this is a short introduction about today's speaker. So now I would like to hand over to Dr. C.M. Ravi Kumar for the presentation.
Thank you, Rohit. Thank you for your nice introduction. Well, it is indeed pleasure for me to talk on the topic titled The Limiting Height and Span of Structures.
You can share the screen now.
Yeah, I'll share the screen now. Yeah. It asked you to join it. ಇಲ್ಲ ನಾನು ಆಗಿದ್ದೆ ಮೆಸೇಜ್ ಬಂದಿತ್ತು ಮೇಲೆ ಬಂದಿರುತ್ತೆ
You can,
while it is
yes,
yeah.
yes, it's audible.
Now I'll start my presentation.
You can start. We will keep our audio mute so that it won't be distracted. So you can continue the presentation.
So, the title of the workshop is The Limiting Height and Span of Structure. I'll start with a small story which is there in the Upanishad, even in Indian mythology. All gods and goddesses went to meet Bhagavanta, who is supreme of all gods, to declare. In the sense, Bhagavanta has called a meeting not to declare who is great or who is strong in nature. So there are 5 participants, competitors for that. One is rock, the other is iron, and then fire, water, and a wind. So in the beginning, they felt that rock is very strong in nature. So Bhagavanta says, so with the help of iron, we can break or make into pieces. So iron is strong rather than rock, he says. When iron is subjected to a fire, there's a so you can bend to any shape. So fire is strong. So when a fire is okay, if you pour a water to a fire, so fire get vanishes. So water is very strong. So during rainy season, what happens? So the movement of rain is depend upon wind blow. So wind gust play important role. Wind, whenever where there's a flow of wind towards that side only, there we can expect a rain. So overall, they felt that the wind is strong. So in this presentation, so I will also say the wind is very strong in designing or analyzing a structure. Once we analyze, so we have to dictate for what sort of load dictates the design. That is very important. So in nature, we have to understand a lot. Nature is itself is a guide for everything. We have to learn a lot about things. Whatever the miracles we do, normally we have to observe nature carefully and we have to do. For the benefit of students, I will say structure is an arrangement of load resisting elements. Once we say structure, it has to say the giving a shape to a structure is nothing but a structural design. Once we say structure, it has to satisfy some of the requirements. It may be a functional requirement or and a structural requirement. Structural requirement constitutes stability. Stability defines the state of equilibrium, the state to resist the sliding and overturning. Strength, capacity to carry loads, we call it as strength. Safety, the margin of it covers only the uncertainties. Serviceability, we normally deflections are the end product of loading. So deflection should be well within the limit. sustainability and durability are more important. The satisfaction of functional and structural requirements throughout the utility period is very, very important. From the safety of, for the safety of structure, we expect strength to be more than that of load. Any increase in load decreases the strength. That is why I consider delta S and delta L. Plus indicates increase, so minus indicates decrease. Increase in load, so in the variation of load I have written as delta L, variation of strength I have written as delta S. Any increase in load decreases the strength, that is why I have written minus here. So if you divide this by S, so if you are taking S as common, 1 minus delta S by S should be more than equal to L into 1 plus delta L by L. If you are bringing L this side, S by L should be more than greater than equal to 1 plus delta L by L divided by 1 minus delta S by S. That indicates this is a factor of safety. Factor of safety you need to consider for the analysis and design of structures. If you see the tallest buildings all over the globe, there are many tallest buildings we can come across all over the globe. So far, Burj Khalifa is treated as one of the highest high-rise buildings. So far, 3 more are coming up in Dubai, so which are listed here, 1, 2, 3. Before it may be more than 1,000 meters. So our interest is to know what may be the height, what factor is important to build such a height and such a span of bridges. Okay, whenever we say height, it is okay related to buildings only. Whenever we say span, related to bridges only. So there are some definitions when we say high-rise building. The building classification is like this in Indian context. If a building is less than 3 up to 3, we call it as a low-rise building. 3 to 7, we call it as a medium-rising building. More than 7 story, if you find, we call it as a multi-story building. According to Empiricist standards, a multi-story structure between 35 to 100 meters tall. So we call it as a high-rise building. We call it as a high-rise building. Building Code of India says a high-rise building is one with floors more than 15 meters or more, even more also. So we call it as a high-rise building. According to fire safety, as per the conference, international conference, we say there will be impact on height also, so that we have to consider. According to USA law, the United States general laws, a high-rise is one having higher, the height is higher than 70 feet, almost 21 meter. Buildings higher than 100 meters is termed as skyscraper. According to Empiricist, buildings 300 meter or higher is termed as super tall, and buildings more than 600 meters is termed as mega tall. So what demands actually we go for high-rise buildings? So there are some demands. So in some of the nations, there will be a scarcity of land. There is an increasing demand for business and residential space, economic growth, economical technological advancement, innovations in social systems, desire for aesthetics in urban settings, cultural significance and prestige, human aspiration to build higher. These are the demands which impose us to go for high-rise building. There are some structural concerns when we say high-rise building. So in reality, all high-rise buildings are subjected to various types of loads depending on the location of the high-rise building. So normally, these are the loads we normally expect for a building. It may be a snow load, it may be a wind load, impact load, blast load, earthquake load, in addition to dead and live loads. Usually, if you take this building and this building, subjected to wind, say it is, see the load transfer, this is due to gravity load. Load transfer will be very, okay, top to bottom, but the building of it is like a cantilever. See, it is high-rise building is ideal as a cantilever beam. So base is fixed, the top is free. So it offers a resistance here. So the same building is subjected to wind. Okay, see the windward side, it reverses the tension and the compression in the member. So this is more important. In the skyscraper, okay, the building pushes down into a ground, but when the wind blows, the columns in the windy side stretch apart, and the columns on the other side squeeze together. That is what you can find here. In addition to that, we need, because the buildings are too tall, say, the building sway due to lateral forces. So that becomes very critical. There's a greater demand on the girders and columns that makes up the rigid frame system to carry lateral. So we need a rigid frame system to carry entire load, because the action concerned to earthquake load, gravity load, and a wind load is somewhat different. So that we have to learn a lot. There are some case studies. So we normally observe. If you see Baton Tower has a tube-in-tube structure. Such a system they adopt as is tube-in-tube. The structural members are made with high-strength concrete. The perimeter columns are held together with the help of ring beams. The internal core structure is made up of concrete shear walls. The building did not require extra damping system because the heavy structural members made up of concrete. This is the plan and elevation of the Petronas Tower. If you see Burj Khalifa, okay, the image shows the Burj Khalifa, the structural system employed in this building. The blue members are the load carrying concrete wall system. All the wall structures are linked to the core with the help of link beam. So there are tier 1, tier 3, tier up to C. You just see here, all blue links are, all blue color indicates the the phenomena what they adopted in case of Burj Khalifa. So there is one more construction building in Abu Dhabi, which is located nearby a beach. Okay, the client wants to build a skyscraper of this circular shape. Okay, in Abu Dhabi. For that, he exercised a lot. Okay, so we normally in civil engineering what we do. So we teach surveying for our students. So what we, with the help of chain and a tape, we give an exercise for our students to construct a pentagon with the help of chain and a tape. What they in a horizontal plane, they will construct a pentagon with the help of chain and a same technique they are adopted in a vertical plane. So that is what you can see here. See, this is regarding world's first taller circular skyscraper, which is located in Abu Dhabi. It is called Aldar headquarters. So this symbolizes the unity as well as stability and rationality of that UAE. So it took a lot of time to build. You want to plan this building. So the phenomena to adopt it for that building to build a circular skyscraper in vertical plane is this. If you say here there's a person, he is simply stretching his legs and a hand in this fashion. If you join all these points, this point and this point, all these points, it becomes a pentagon. The same idea they have adopted in building high-rise, in the sense, the structural system what they adopted is a pentagon type of. It is actually the idea that they have taken from this technique. There is a story behind Bahubali. I'm not telling the story of Bahubali directed by Rajamouli. This is the statue, monument. There is one monument in Dharmasthala, so which was given a shape by an Iyengar in Karkala, and then they moved this statue, and then they erected, okay, transported and then erected in Dharmasthala in a hilly area. So to do that, they brought a single monolithic stone. Is Mr. Iyengar, he has given a shape of Bahubali. Once the Bahubali is ready, so that they have to travel from Karkala to Dharmasthala, almost it is 64 kilometers. This person didn't use a single salt content in the preparation of food, just because he will lose concentration. See, in the sense, if you use a salt content in the preparation of food, so there will not be you will not get a concentration to do a work. So that is why he has not used a single salt content to do the work throughout the completion of the work. Once they installed, erected and installed, then only use the salt content in the preparation of food. That is the idea he got, and he completed that work. Once it is ready, then they have moved from Karkala to Dharmasthala. It is almost 64 kilometers, and the weight of that stone is 170 tons. See, while moving, transporting that single monolithic stone, that is statue of Bahubali, from Karkala to Dharmasthala, it has to cross many bridges. Bridges are not designed for this 170 tons. So they have provided additional support, and then they moved. And they hired on a trolley with the 64 wheels, driven by 3 tractors of 250 horsepower they required. So, and then they moved, and all of them are supported. Hindus, Muslims, Christians, all of them are supported unitely. So all of them have prayed till the transportation and till the completion of the erection of the stone. So morning, evening, even in so even in every day they prayed a lot to do this work. So the technique, once they moved from Karkala to Dharmasthala, I told you there are many bridges. Bridges are not designed for this type of loading. So they have provided additional support, and somehow they have moved. Once they reach the Dharmasthala, there they have to take that statue to a hilly area. Hilly area, so it is very difficult to move a single stone. Somehow they have reached with the help of many techniques, reached the hilly area, and then they brought they dig a foundation. Once the foundation is ready, then they have to make it straight with the help of crane. So with the help of crane, they have lifted the statue, and they have to justify this statue is vertically straight. How to justify this? So this work was assigned to a professor, a former principal of NIT Surat, Basavarajaya. So he read an anatomy book. In that anatomy book, it is very clear that the ear portion and this, there is a knot here, tarsals. Okay, he has set a theodolite in front of a statue. So with the help of they moved, okay, lift, and he has bisected this portion as well as this portion, ear portion, with the line of action and the cross section of this and this cross section, line of action of these to lie in one plane. Then only we can say justify or say the statue is what in right manner. So that is the technique. That is why for a civil engineer, knowledge of anatomy, knowledge of mathematics, because there are some qualifications for a structural engineer. He has to have the idea of loads and load combination. He has to have an imagination. He has to have an idealization, and he has to be mathematically strong. Apart from that, you should have to know some other skills also, some of the knowledge also. Then only we can able to do this type of work. I told you regarding Lord Gomateshwara, we call Gomateshwara also. So it is there is one more Bahubali, which we can find in Shravana Balagala. Some similar studies are carried out by our Pradeep Kumar Ramacharla of IIIT Hyderabad. So this is actually 18 meter high. This is actually a statue standing at 80 meter in a hilly area. And the size, it is actually a rectangular block of size, say length 6.59 meter and a width 4.7 meter. And the height is 10 meter. And the mass of this is almost this much. And this statue, the standing monolithic statue, has been subjected. It's a freestanding monolithic statue, has been subjected to a various Indian ground motion, strong ground motion, say. So none of the selected records, you see all these are some ground motions. So when these ground motions are subjected to this statue, none of the selected records can shake the statue up to collapse. It means that all the points are lying well within the surface generated. You can see here. So it is very interesting for a structural engineer or a civil engineer to know loads and forces on buildings, because I told you that is the first qualification. Okay, you have to have the idea of loads, and then only we can able to do or design or analyze a inspiring structure. The statics of a building deals with its structural stability according to Newton's first law. When an object is in equilibrium, the sum of all forces equals to 0. What are the sources of forces that act on the building structure? As you can see here, these are the various loads: the gravity loads, dead loads, live loads, snow loads, lateral loads, wind loads, seismic loads, specific load cases, and impact loads, blast loads. If you take an example, a tree, wherever you go, tree, the stem of a tree remains circular in section, whether in India, whether in USA or Pakistan or any country if you go, stem of a tree is always circular. It grows, tree grows in a circular manner. What dictates for a tree to grow in a circular fashion? The wind dictates. When a wind goes and hits a tree, it has to take a path. That is the reason. Wind dictates a tree to grow in a circular manner. But the phenomena of earthquake, the phenomena for the design of building when it is subjected to wind load is different than that of earthquake load. Earthquake load is an inertia force. Okay, so we will see the differences here. Load, I will talk about loads and okay, I'll discuss loads and load forces. All loads are forces, but all forces are not loads. When a force is acting externally, it is called load. Dead load, loads that have fixed magnitude and position, we call it as dead load. Live load, loads whose magnitude and position is not fixed. Wind, air in motion, we call it as wind. Earth pressure, not much problem as that of dead load and live load. Snow load in Himalayan regions, not much problem as that of dead load and live load. Wind pressure in dams only we consider. Earthquake load, response usually created internally. Hence, it is a force, not a load. We make it a load. So that is why we adopt a code of provisions to make it as a load. So that is why the analysis and design are both iterative. If you compare earthquake load and a wind load, wind is actually a pressure type of loading, whereas earthquake load is a inertia force. It is something like you think that you are in a bus, you don't have seat to sit inside a bus. Okay, driver is going with a speed of say 160 or 180 km/h. If a driver suddenly applies a brake, your feet moves along with your leg, whereas your upper portion will be thrown back. In the same manner, when a building is subjected to an earthquake load, the base moves along with the direct acceleration, but the upper portion will be thrown back. So that is why it is an inertia force. Whereas the earthquake wind load is a pressure type of loading, which is okay uniform. As you go high and high, the height of the building increases. Say the wind pressure also increases. But in case of earthquake load, ductility is more important. So in case of wind load, stiffness is more important. Stiffness is play important role. Whereas for earthquake load, ductility play important role. Apart from ductility and the stiffness, okay, the damages are more important. In case of wind, if a building is having a damage, so if it is subjected to wind, the damage is not at all allowed for a wind case. But in case of earthquake load, damage may be allowed, but ductility play important role. That is why damages may be okay, may be important, maybe in the sense very important when you consider okay high-rise building into consideration. So it's basically wind is a pressure type building, earthquake load is a inertia type of building. So both are okay cyclic in nature. So we call it as a dynamic load. So the action when it is action, say when the wind is in action, the performance the response is somewhat different. When the earthquake load is in action, the response is different. So this is some okay. We have taken a frame. Here there's a frame. Okay, this frame is subjected to a gravity load. This frame is subjected to a lateral load. We will see the performance. Okay, when a building is subjected to a gravity load, so tension is here, tension is here, tension is here, tension is this side, tension is this side. Okay, tension is this side. So this is the amount of tension you can find when it is subjected to a gravity load. The same frame is subjected to a tension, say lateral load. It reverses the tension in a compression in the member. So there, in the sense, the same building is subjected to a lateral load. So horizontal load and a wind load are treated as lateral load. When these are subjected to a building, so there will be a reversal of so that you have to take care during. That is why, as for seismic design philosophy, that is as per code of practice, this has been revised now, 2016. Strength and ductility are the main two attributes of a structure to resist the earthquake forces efficiently, particularly in severe seismic zones. Two requirements are necessary for a structure designed as per earthquake practice. Firstly, strength for which a structure will be designed, and the secondly is ductility is more important. This is for earthquake load. See, here there's a person who is carrying his load. He himself is a column. So this is actually a beam, whatever the stick he has taken to carry a load, that acts like a beam. If he is strong, then only he can able to carry entire load. That is why in case of earthquake load, we go for strong column and a weak beam. So there are some important modifications in code of practice. So we consider two levels of earthquake: design basis earthquake and a maximum considered earthquake. Earthquake that can reasonably be expected to occur once during the design life of a structure. We call it as design basis earthquake. The most severe earthquake effects considered by the standard, we call it as maxima. In the sense, we have to consider this and we have to design for that. In the sense, there are three seismic hazard levels. One is serviceability earthquake, design basis earthquake, maximum considered earthquake. In case of serviceability earthquake, there will be a 50% probability of accidents in 50 years. Return period may be 100 years. In case of design basis earthquake, there is a chances of 100% probability of accidents in 50 years. The return period may be 500 years. The maximum considered earthquake, in case of maximum considered earthquake, there will be a probability of 2% of accidents in 50 years. The return period we will consider as 2,500 years. That is why in code of practice, zone factor corresponds to this maximum considered earthquake. The value of Z4 are evaluated in a deterministic way. It cannot be directly related to the definition what we said above. The factor 2 is in the denominator of Z is used so as to reduce the MCE, maximum considered earthquake zone factor to the factor to DBE, design basis earthquake. So cautious factor, load factor we have to consider to DBE in the load combination. So the risk can be defined in this fashion. Risk is always a dot product of hazard, site effects, and a vulnerability. Vulnerability is nothing but analysis of structure when it is subjected to a hazard, maybe in terms of interstory dips, stresses, and strains. But risk is nothing but probability of damages and losses, whereas vulnerability is depends on building type. I told you the analysis in terms of many parameters. It depends on building type and age, population density, land use, and month and time. But soil effects play an important role. So soil amplification is due to soil type and topography. Whereas the hazard is nothing but the probability of ground motion. This can be mitigated. This can be estimated. This can be estimated, but the hazard can be mitigated. So these are some of the tall structures. So this is actually Leaning Tower of Pisa. This is Eiffel Tower. How tall are they? This is our interest. How to build these tall buildings? What factor is important? What parameter goes the design? So both are so those factors are very important for a structural engineer to build a high-rise building. So this is one more high-rise building during in the early 20th century. It is actually a Royal Liver building in Liverpool. And there are some other buildings which are built earlier. A 30-story building, 36-story, and this is one more building. So now our interest. Do you know these buildings? How tall are they? What are the structures? That is very interesting. So in future, what may be the height of a building? That is more interesting for a structural engineer. So whenever we say skyscraper, high-rise, mega tall, super tall, anything, what sort of section is required? Whether we go for a prismatic section, whether we go for a tapering section, or whether we go for a varying cross section. So whatever the high-rise building you can see in Abu Dhabi or in any nation, either they have to build prismatic type or this type, tapering type, or varying cross section. If you consider the council, the officially being used by the council to describe if the height is more than 600 meters or double the height of a superstar, because Burj Khalifa is almost 801 meters. So our interest is to know what parameters it is important to build or to go for such a high-rise building. So I will take up this first, prismatic section. and then I will take up this tapering section, and I will take up the last varying cross section. So, because our interest is to know, because I told you for the safety of such a trench, we expect more than that of load. Generally, it is fine. So, if the load is more, the strength becomes weak. So strength is more important. So, we will consider the prismatic section. What were the limiting height we will discuss? Okay. So, I told you it is like a cantilever, base is fixed. So, consider a solid prismatic block of cross-sectional area A and height h. Let the unit weight of the block material be rho and the ultimate compressive strength be F. The maximum load at the base due to self-weight alone, I have taken only the self-weight alone. Okay, what was the maximum load? So, A into H, area into H is nothing but volume. Volume multiplied by density will give you the load. It's very simple. The maximum load by area is nothing but what? Stress. Okay, this divided by stress, A H into rho is the load now. Divided by area, A get cancelled, H into rho. For this stress, this is actually a stress now. For this stress not to exceed strength, okay? In the sense, H into rho should be less than equal to strength. Then we'll get H should be less than equal to F by rho. If you adopt a normal concrete of M30 grade of concrete, if you take density as 20 kilonewton per meter cube, say Fs 30,000 kilonewton per meter square, we arrive at the limiting height as H should be less than, okay, 1250 meter, either less than equal to 125. In the sense, if you adopt a simple M30 grade of concrete, if the section is prismatic, if the high-rise building is prismatic in nature, we can go up to a height of 1250 meter. If you consider a tapering section, even if the block is in questions were to be tapering, one with the area being A at the bottom, vanishing to 0 at the top. Load usually 1/3 of H into rho, volume into density. Stress again divided by area, 1/3 into H into rho. Was this stress not to exceed strength? 1/3 H into rho should be less than strength. Okay, if you adopt same grade of concrete, so you can go up to a height of 3750 meter. Still more, if you are going for a tapering section, still we can build a high-rise building up to a height of 3750 meter. What detects? Actually, if you see here, L, okay, L is just see here, it can be recognized that the maximum height is achievable is restricted by the material strength to weight ratio. To extend possibility, we need to seek materials with high specific strength to weight ratio. Also, it should be remembered that limiting height is arrived for self height alone. Okay, and it is, if we include some other loads and effects are included, say, which are drastically less compared to. Suppose if you consider a varying cross section, okay, some area, say here, this is the cross section with the varying cross section, some area at top and some area at the bottom. Let the cross section area at the top be small a, and the distance distance x from the top be a. Say here from here, the bottom is a. Figure shows the forces acting on the slice of thickness dx. Say I'll consider a small element here. Say here some area, small element, and where is the W? W is nothing but a density, and sigma is the uniform stress. If a varying cross section is subjected to uniform stress, and if you equate this force, these forces acting on an element here, so the dA indicates what? Change in area, change in cross section. That's all. So the force is vertically down here. It offers a resistance, that is sigma into A plus into dA. This is for an element. So if you equate all these forces, sigma into A plus dA minus sigma A should be equal to what are the total load which is coming, the WA into dx. If you separate these variables, okay, so this get cancelled. dA by A should be equal to W into dx by sigma. W is nothing but density here. Sigma is nothing but uniform stress. If you are integrating this expression, it becomes log base E, okay, log A equal to W divided by sigma into X plus C. When X equal to 0, okay, when X equal to 0 here, A is small a. If you put here C equal to log A base E, giving this expression. A is, okay, A is small a e to the power of Wx divided by sigma, where W is nothing but density, sigma is nothing but stress. Okay, this is the top cross section area, this is the bottom cross section. This is the expression we are taking. So similarly, so our interest is to know, yeah, that of height also. What will be span? Because the bridges are continuous or many support. Bridges are designed as a continuous beam. It continuous on many supports. It is like a simply supported beam. If they see there is a lady who is standing on a bridge, okay, man-made bridge. So what do you expect? Compression at the top, you can expect tension at the bottom. The behavior is like this. So these are some of the longest bridges in the world, so which we come across. That is, this is actually 164.8 kilometer length in China. There is one more bridge in China that is 113.7 kilometer length. That is a Chi Grand Bridge. And then Bangana Expressway, if you see, 55 kilometer length in Thailand. And one more in Louisiana, it is almost 38.35 kilometer length. So you just see Louisiana, there is one more bridge which is of 36.69 kilometer length. So what is important for a build a bridge of this span? So what may be the limiting span? So our interest to know what may be limiting span. Let us attempt to determine the theoretical maximum span. Consider a simply supported beam carrying its own weight. Let L be the span and let B and D be the width and depth of the beam. Let rho, F and tau be the unit weight of the material, ultimate bending strength and shear strength respectively. And let delta max be maximum permissible deflection of the beam. So once we say simply supported beam, the behavior we can expect structural behavior in a kind of deflection will be more, there will be a shear. So based on all these considerations, first we will consider structural consideration. For structural stresses to be less than maximum permissible strength, load per meter, BD into rho into density, load per meter, maximum moment for a simply supported beam, BD rho into L square by WL square by 8. BD into rho is nothing but load, WL square by 8 is the maximum bending moment of simply supported beam. Section on modulus, Z equal to BD square by 6 is a rectangular cross section. Maximum bending stress we can express M by Z. To substitute here for M and Z, you will arrive 3 by 4 rho L square divided by D. This is the stress, actually bending stress due to loading, due to dead load alone. So this stress to be less than maximum strength. Naturally, I have to write this should be less than the maximum strength. So if you rearrange this, you will get an expression L should be less than equal to root of 4F divided by 3 into rho into D. See here, L is nothing but a span, D is nothing but a depth of the section. L is directly proportional to the depth. What does it indicate? The equation suggests any span is possible with right hand. That is what we got from flexural consideration. If you adopt a deflection consideration, for a simply supported beam subjected to UDL, the maximum deflection at the center should be less than the permissible, and hence we can write phi WL to the power of 4 divided by 384A. This should be less than equal to delta max. W is nothing but what? BD into rho. I is nothing but what? BDP by 12. So therefore, if you substitute here the value of W and I, so and rearranging, we get L should be less than equal to 4th root of square delta max E divided by 5 into rho. What does it indicate? Again, if you see, L is directly proportional to D. This expression again suggests that any span can be managed provided the depth is right. That is what the indication. If you consider shear consideration, maximum shear force we can work out. Maximum, what is the shear force? What is the reaction there? Load WL by 2. BD into rho is nothing but WL by 2. Average shear stress, again, divided by area, rho L divided by 2. For shear stress to be less than shear strength. Okay, this should be less than shear strength. Okay, if you substitute simply M30 grade of concrete, tau for M30 concrete is 3,500 kilometer per meter square and rho is say 25 kilometer meter per. If you substitute here in this expression, L equal to less than equal to 3,500 into 2 divided by 25. That is, L should be less than equal to 280 meters. What does it indicate? It demonstrates that there's a limit on span and it is dictated by shear consideration, not anything else. So it is here, there's an appreciation of the behavioral aspect, okay, which is very important. It is redundant to recall that the beam is wonderful device of the structural engineer that channelizes vertical loads horizontally, and this horizontal load flow is accomplished by shear, and it is but natural that this phenomenon should dictate the possible limits. So this dictates the possible limits. Yet again, we come to know the inescapable conclusion that to extend limiting possibilities, we should search for materials with high strength. That is why it is the capability of an engineer to produce as high strength as possible. In the earlier, maybe in 1950, to say the definition of concrete as a composite mixture of cement, fine aggregate, and a coarse aggregate. Now the definition of concrete is not so. We use lot many mineral admixtures, chemical admixture to produce high strength concrete as possible. That is why strength play important role. That is what even you can see in an expression. So to build high-rise building, structural systems play important role. So gravity loads are the primary concerns, primary loading on the building. However, the buildings become taller. Okay, it must adequate have strength, stiffness to resist lateral loads caused by wind and moderate earthquakes. As the height of the building increases, the additional stiffness required to control the deflection rather than the strength of the member. So which dictates the design? In the sense, strength, stiffness, ductility are the three attributes of any design. If you see high-rise, the concept of going for a high-rise building and the structural system, okay, was suggested by one man who is a popular name in structural engineering called Fazlur Rahman Khan. He was the person introduced structural system to the entire community of structural engineering. The structural system of high-rise building is designed to cope up with vertical gravity loads as well as lateral loads caused by wind or seismic activity. The structural system consists of only the members designed to carry the load, and all other members are referred to as non-structural systems. Okay, so we have to have a guidance to design structural and a non-structural system. Okay, in some of the cases, claddings and all. Okay, even to reduce drift, and we have to go for claddings, non-structural systems also. A classification for such a system of high-rise building was introduced in the 1969 by a Fazlur Rahman Khan. We have to salute him. He was a poor Muslim of belongs to Bangladesh, studied in India, West Bengal College of Engineering, and then he moved to USA to do MS and PhD. There he completed and he became a popular at the age of 52 or 53. He dies. He achieves everything, and at the early age he dies. So the evolution, okay, of such a systems goes this way. There are, we call type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4. So depending on the number of floors, okay, if the floor is restricted to this, okay, semi-rigid frame system is enough, like that. So this is actually the evolution, and it is better to adopt this type of structural system depending on the number of floors. Again, if you are going for a structural system of steel structural systems and the number of story, so this is some rough idea for the structural engineers, okay, to adopt the structural system, especially for steel structures. If it is less than 40 story, rigid frame is enough, okay, like that. So there are some various types of core systems, especially These are the core system, tube in tube, okay, shear wall frame system, shearing frame system, ordinary moment resistive frame system, many types we can, depending on this, okay, situation, location, everything play important role. So types of tubular system you can see here. These are the types of tubular system we normally adopt in case of high-rise building. Okay, pyramid tube, performance type, deep spindle type, and truss like a bundle type like that. So there are okay, there are some examples of steel such a system which they adopted for some of the case studies. Okay, this is for a chest bank. They adopted suspended system. Bank of China, they adopted a composite frame system. Petronas Tower, they adopted tube in tube system. Okay, this concept was given by a popular professor, Fazlur Rahman Khan. So like that, for our W Trade Center, okay, tube with core. So in case of shear frame system, okay, lateral loads resist the lateral deformation by jet rotation, requires high bending stiffness of columns and beams. Rigid joints are essential for stability, not effective for heights over 30 stories. In case of brace frame system, lateral forces are resisted by axial actions of bracings and columns. Steel bracing members are filled in base, more efficient than a rigid frame. So again, this is cantilever type, shear type, combined type also included. For a outrigger brace system, for 1 to story deep truss connects core to perimeter columns, increases the bending rigidity. You just see the outriggers. So and there will be a braced core here. Okay, depending on dependent of the rigid core for shear. This is for the shear resistance one, because compression is this side, tension is this side. Okay, that we have to catch. The windward side and the leeward side play important role. Okay, proper such a system we are taught of. In case of core such a system, lateral and gravity loads supported by central core, and it eliminates columns and bracing elements. Core is inefficient because it is not deep to resist or respect to with respect to bending. Moment supported cores are efficient. Okay, there is a core here. Just see here. This is group cantilever floors and individually cantilever floors. There is a high efficiency mega frame press system. This is also very popular. So very large columns and the bracings are enough. Small numbers of columns, basic sections for multiple posts. These are some of the advantages going for this high efficiency mega brace system. So in the case of belt truss system that they adopted in China, Shanghai Tower. Okay, this is the core truss. This is the mega structure actually. Outrigger truss if you see here. So this is the technique they adopted. Shear wall frame system. So the symmetry you have to make. Whenever you go for shear wall frame system, symmetry you have to make use of. Symmetry play an important role. So that area you have to adopt depending on the location. If it is seismically prone area, it is better to go for shear wall frame system. In case of frame system that we adopted here, it's a frame tube structures. Okay, gravity load is shared between the tube and the interior column, and the frame consists of nearly 6 to 12 feet. Okay, between the centers joined by deep spindle girders. So when the lateral load is acting, say the direction of loading acts, okay, on the waves, the massive, okay, tube of the cantilever, and those normal to the direction of the loading, okay, which act as the flanges. So the tube form was developed originally for building of rectangular plan, and probably it is most efficient used in that shape. Again, the truss tube, okay, cladding with the truss tube is more important. You can control dip and all if you go for cladding. So recently the use of perimeter diagonals, okay, the diagrid type for such a efficiency, it is convenient to go for this also depending on the situation. Again, this indicates a bundled tube system. So Burj Khalifa is a bundled tube system, which are linked here. So you just see at the various higher levels they are linked. and the spacing which make it possible to place even interior frame without seriously compressing interior space plan. So it is a dynamic shape, very depth. So you should just see the shape, okay? It's a dynamic shape. Tube in tube system is better, okay? So you can find here. So the variation of the frame tube consists of an outer frame and a tube in tube. Okay, that they have adopted for this RG building in Kuala Lumpur. The structure tube usually adopts a highly dominant role because of its much greater structural depth. Because of its structural depth, they adopted tube in tube system. Again, a classification of tall buildings depending on structural system. We call exterior structures, interior structures. Okay, interior structures are of this type, exterior structures are this type. Okay, in interior structure system, we call we treat rigid frame as the interior system, shear wall structure as the interior system. It can build up to a 20 to 30, 25 floors. This is better. I can build up to a 35 floors. Okay, concrete or masonry continuous verticals are enough. Maybe aesthetically. Okay, so like that. So in outrigger system, this is also a okay. It is also interior system. Outrigger system that they adopted for the Shanghai World Financial Center in China. In case of exterior structures, they get a tube system, framed tube, braced tube, bundled tube, and tube in tube are better if you go for exterior. So again, a diagram system, what you can see here, it is also a best as if the height is the building height is tall or super tall or mega tall. Space stress, again, you can adopt a co-skeletal structures like that. This is that they are adopted by Bank of China, Hong Kong. This that adopted for one hotel. Super frame structures of this type, okay, in various levels, like say for particular level, okay, like this super frame structures, okay, the combination of okay all systems is enough. So apart from this, uncertainty is one of the biggest problem in structural engineering. We need to address this because the tube strength and the modulus of structure, Young's modulus, and the properties of concrete that are generally required in the design of concrete structure. The variation of this is due to many reasons: variation in the quality of material, variation in weight, variation in the mixed proportions, variation in the transporting method, variation in the placing of concrete, variation in the methods of curing, variation in the testing. How to adopt variation, how to address the uncertainty in structuring is one of the biggest challenge now. Even so we treat the property of concrete itself is because randomly load is also random in nature, load is also random in nature. So it is probability, how to handle the probability, how to bring the probability into analysis and design is a biggest challenge here. So even the static properties of the material steel, okay, ultimate tensile strength of steel also we treat it as a uncertainty, random variation. So variation because no brand will provide a same strength. Okay, so when you compare the brand wise also, so one brand is giving some other strength, the other brand is coming. That is due to okay cross section area, rate of loading during testing. The variations are due to many regions. So variation you have to address. Okay, even there will be constructional variation. Even there is an uncertainty in analysis, there is an uncertainty in modeling. So everything we need to encounter. So if these are the steels actually, say steel, and so these are, if you see for a various grade of steel, there will be variation in the materials in their okay broaches. How to address this? So nowadays, to obtain a dynamic properties of the building, whether it is high-rise, medium-rise, or a low-rise building, better to adopt a nonlinear static analysis. You can get easily the dynamic properties of the building, the frequency, time period, and motions we get easily. Okay, so this is the first fundamental node through which we can push a building till collapse. So this will be the structure of nonlinearity, because when a building is subjected to a loading, both a combination of load, it is no longer elastic in nature, it is inelastic in nature. How to okay design a building for inelastic behavior? So perform based concepts comes into picture. Okay, so we need to define in properties everything, and then we have to push a building. This is simple G plus 3-story building, 4-story building. When you push a building till collapse like this, The 1 inch is formed here. You can see here. Go on pushing a building. One more inch is formed. Later it enters the inelastic zone. Okay, like this. You just see the nonlinear behavior. So the capture of these hinges, where exactly the first inch forms, where exactly the second inch forms, where exactly the third inch forms, it is very difficult to predict in such an engine. So there's a lot of scope here to do a research on this, and you have to collapse anyway. Collapse will occur only when the last inch is formed, the instability occurs, and then total collapse occurs. So this is the load deformation curve for that. So initially it behaves elastically and then elastoplastically and fully plastically. This is the strain hardening zone. So if it behaves when it is subjected to any type of loading, okay, if it behaves like this, you can easily occupy the building. Even in this zone also, life is safety. Okay, if the behavior is this, okay, it is, you are not supposed to occupy that building. Some, okay, repair, restoration, rehabilitation, retrofitting work. So that is why there's a clear, okay, difference between a repair, restoration, rehabilitation, and a retrofitting. Repair is nothing but a cosmetic touch-up. Restoration is nothing but an action taken to restore the structure to a structural element. Retrofit, if you are improving the system performance, we call it as a retrofitting. The behavior, if you improve, we call it as retrofitting. Rehabilitation, it's a master umbrella which includes everything: repair, restoration, and retrofitting also. So rehabilitation includes everything, cosmetic touch-up also. So for that, we need a knowledge of materials and material behavior. Overall, I can conclude, okay? See, ultimately, it is the objective of such an engineer to achieve as strength as possible. It is the capability of such an engineer to build as high as possible, okay, with the advantage of, okay, our strength, okay, and with the advantage of such a system, you can build high-rise, mega tall, super tall buildings. So there's no doubt, but the thing is, how to achieve those strengths is very important. For that, you need to adopt many materials to achieve a strength, and a combination of such a system works out very well as far as skyscrapers are concerned. So if you have, that is what I want to say in this webinar. If you have any questions or queries, you just ask me. I'm in a position to answer. All right.
Yes. Uh, Thank you, Dr. CM Ravi Kumar. It was really a wonderful session. You have covered a lot of topics from in detail structural framing, limiting height and limiting span of structure. And you have also covered plastic hinge formation mechanism. It was really a wonderful session. Thank you once again, Dr. Ravi Kumar.
Thank you, Rahul.
So now we will move on to a question and answer session.
Definitely,
So
definitely. I am ready to take.
Yes.
I'm ready to take up some few questions.
Yes. There are two questions which people have posted, and if anyone have more questions, please post in Q&A session. So the question one, it is posted by Vinay MR. What is the maximum limiting height of varying cross section area of building?
That is what you can see in a varying cross section I have discussed. As per height or span is concerned.
Height, as per height, maximum limiting height.
We have discussed. We can go when compared to prismatic section, the varying cross section, we can go still higher. But the strength is one of the parameter. How to achieve that strength is more important.
Okay. So hope Vinay, we have answered your question. If you have more queries,
so if you have still any more questions, you just mail me. I will answer for your question.
Yes. So one more question we have: what are the factors that a limiting span of bridge depends on?
Depth only. Depth. It depends on depth. They are directly proportional to depth. Okay. So shear dictates actually. So shear play important role. Okay, not even flexure and other deflection. Deflection we can control. Okay, once the depth is more. Okay, it is a length to span to depth ratio. Okay, that is more important. Is it okay?
Okay. Okay. So any other questions, please you can post in Q&A session. If not, you can mail us personally. We'll be discussing with the speaker and we'll address the question. So I guess there is no more questions.
If they have any questions, say from the participants,
Okay.
let them
Okay.
pose the questions to you.
Okay.
We'll answer in the mail also, no problem.
Sure, sure, sure. So,
Yeah.
okay, finally, I would like to thank all the attendees for taking their time and attending the session. Hope we have covered some interesting topics which will be useful for you, which may not be found in several books. So, finally, we'll be issuing e-certificate for all the attendees shortly. So for more workshops and training sessions, stay connected with us with our LinkedIn page. So I would once again like to thank our speaker, Dr. C.M. Ravi Kumar. Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you, Rahul.
So we would like to conclude the session now. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
people
Thank
are
you.
asking, can you please share the presentation PPT? So what I would like to say is we will be sharing the entire video of the session on YouTube page, Study Dynamics YouTube page shortly, maybe in another 24 hours or something.
Okay.
So entire session can be found there.
Yeah, if some people want, we can share also.
Yes, yes, yes.
No
sure,
problem from my side.
sure. So thank you once again. Thank you, everyone. So we are logging out.
Yeah.
Bye. Have a good day.